Welcome, everyone, to the Business in Calgary podcast. I'm Oliver Basner, your host today, and so delighted and excited, actually. We've got with us Kimberley Presser, who's the CEO of Between Friends. So welcome to the show, Kim.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to talk to you, actually. I've kind of researched you, and there's a few interesting stats about you that we're going to talk about later. So, but before we even jump in there, let me just talk a little bit about Kimberley. Kimberley was selected by Business in Calgary as one of the 2024 Leader Awards winners, and so congratulations. That was a great award. There wasn't a ton of winners. I was at the awards evening, so congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Were you surprised?
Yes, very surprised. Very caught off guard.
So you didn't see it coming?
No, absolutely not.
Well, let's tell our listeners a little bit what the judges used to kind of pick the organizations that were picked. And so the judges said that the characteristics that stood out were creativity, imagination, and a commitment to the community, which I know is huge for you. Mm-hmm. Leaders were very committed to making the community stronger, healthier, and more vibrant. So tell us a little bit about Between Friends. You've been around since 1982, and why do you think you won that award? Like, what made the difference?
Absolutely. So we can actually trace our roots back even further than 1982, which
Really?
makes us really unique. So we're an organization strictly providing social recreation and development opportunities for people with disabilities.
Right.
So if you kind of think back to like the 1960s, 1970s, that's really outside the norm. And so when we can trace our roots back to, teenagers going for dinner or bowling with kids with disabilities,
Yes.
It really sparked our organization. And so we were formalized in 1982 as a United Way agency.
Okay.
So we've been funded through the United Way pretty much since day one. Now the United Way is a small portion of our funding. But what we do is we just provide the fun in people with disabilities' lives. So that could be evenings and weekend activities, that could be summer day camp opportunities, it could be adventures like vacations, upwards of 5 days at a time. It could be special events. We just had St. Patrick's Day dances.
Yeah.
And then a whole other arm, which I think is really where the Business in Calgary looked at, was we have a whole arm of our organization that's inclusion services. So we're out in the community teaching about inclusion, making the Calgary area just a more equitable place for our participants to belong to. So whether that's through training opportunities or partnering with oil and gas companies, having them come down to our camps, it's really just about bringing the community together to create a more valuable place for everyone to belong.
And how's the community responding? What are you finding? You've been there for a while now.
Yeah,
so.
I would say right now DEI is very much top of mind
Right.
of most organizations. And I think when we look at it, a lot of people look at the diversity and equity piece.
Right.
It's the inclusion piece, especially around people with disabilities, that's often forgotten. A lot of big companies sometimes have the belief that it's more expensive to have a person with a disability work
Right.
for them or be part of their recreation services. And so we're really being called upon to look at that aspect of it, of actually it's not that more costly, it's not that more difficult.
Right.
And statistically, people with disabilities are going to stay longer. And so really working with oil and gas companies, big businesses in downtown Calgary to provide those training services for them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's interesting because you talk about the inclusion part, and I was speaking to a CEO here in Calgary literally last week, and he said DEIB.
Yeah.
And so again, the B is fairly new, the belonging, right? And I'm sure that's also a big part of making sure that there's a feeling of belonging in the community.
Yeah, our tagline is Connect, Grow, Belong. And so I would say very much so.
Perfect.
We were very thrilled to see that B coming into the conversation because you can provide a space for equity, you can provide a space for inclusion, but really you need to provide a space for someone to belong. It's two different concepts. So yeah, it's really unique to see that extra shift that's coming as we learn through DEI
Right.
and kind of acknowledge that part and then, okay, now what's next?
Yeah, and whether we have disabilities or not, we all want to belong to part of something.
Yeah.
We want to be part of something, part of a group, part of an organization, part of...
Well, and didn't we all notice that during COVID?
Of course.
We had nowhere to go. We had nowhere to belong to. And that's where we saw mental health issues. And so what our participants experience is no different than what all of us experienced for close to 3 years now.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the ramifications of all of that. And so we are still finding places for everyone to belong.
Awesome. No, just great work you're doing. And let's talk a little bit about you. So you've been there since 2006, started as a camp counselor.
Correct?
So going on 20 years.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Right.
You must enjoy it. So talk to us about that journey. Like, how did you end up at the top of the organization? I'm sure that wasn't the plan 20 years
That
ago.
was not the plan when I signed up as a camp counselor.
And before you even do that, what's your camp name? There has to be a camp name.
There is. My camp name is Burley.
Okay. How come?
Because I'm super tall and lanky. And so I grew up playing hockey and I was a
Right.
goaltender. So in my pads, I was big and burly. And then my name is Kimberley. So it just
kind of worked.
it just happened.
That's
and then
awesome.
it was kind of an oxymoron later on in life. But yeah, so my journey actually started in Ottawa. That's where I was born and
Right.
raised. And I was doing my child and youth degree back there. And I was placed in a school with a child with Down syndrome. And so I worked, it started off with 1 period a day, and then I started to become his educational assistant.
Right.
And then I actually started even working at home with him. And so through that, I literally Googled camp for kids with disabilities.
Okay.
And Between Friends popped up. And I thought to myself, hey, I've never left Ottawa. I've never lived away from my parents. I'll go try it for a summer. So I did. I came to Calgary in 2006 for 1 summer. Absolutely loved it and have never left. So I did 2 summers at Camp Bonaventure.
Yes.
And then moved into the office as the camps and special events coordinator. We did a whole lot of personality tests, realized I was like super good behind the scenes. So moved to operations for a whole
Right.
bunch of years.
Right.
And then, CEO was never on my radar. I am a very introverted, behind the scenes human. And so being the front of an organization seemed very big and scary.
Of course.
But our CEO of 20 years announced her retirement the December before COVID hit. And so our organization had already started our CEO search when
Right.
COVID happened. And we had made the difficult decision that we weren't going to be able to run programs because so many of our members have immune compromised.
Right.
Also, if you look at kids on the autism spectrum, to say, hey, we're going to stop programs, we're going to run them, we're going to stop them. It's just a lot of
Right.
work and stuff. So I kind of had this moment of, I can't let this organization go to somebody who's never been here. I can't let our families not know what's next. So my husband and my kiddo convinced me to, just try, just put your resume in, just try.
Just try.
And I absolutely love it.
And the rest is history.
Yeah, I love it. I love the relationships I've got to make. I've loved the fundraising aspect, which I didn't think I would love. And even these kinds of things. Speaking about the organization, it's just normal now. It's not scary.
Well, and you have to enjoy it or you wouldn't
Yeah.
be able to do it, right? So you know you're making an impact, you're making a difference, and
Yep.
it makes it that much easier to talk about, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people ask if it's the impact that I'm making, and it's actually the impact that they have on me and my family. So after working there for close to 20 years, my first summer, I had kiddos who were 4 or 5 years old.
Right.
Now they're 24 or 25 years old.
Wow.
They've graduated high school. Some of them have gotten driver's license. Some of them have gotten married. And it's truly their journeys that have kept me
Yeah.
doing what I just get to do the fun stuff behind the scenes. They're the ones I look at their lives and all the exciting things that they've got to do. Some of them have traveled the world, and a lot of their parents attribute it to their time at Between Friends and the social skills that they've learned. And so I turn it to them, their impact, not mine.
Well, it's a great lead into my next question I had for you, which is give us a little advice, because we've got listeners out there probably thinking about, okay, so what's it like getting involved in the community? What's it like to be part of an organization like that? So tell us a little bit about that, and what can people expect if they were to volunteer or get involved in a nonprofit organization like yours?
Yeah, volunteering is huge. So an organization like ours, we have 13 full-time staff. We have roughly 80 part-time staff, and then typically we have 300 volunteers. So
It's a huge complement of people.
it is. And those 300 volunteers allow us to continue what we're doing because we can do it without the additional cost
Right.
of 300 salaries. For us, we try and make it as simple as humanly possible to volunteer. So it could be anywhere from a one-time 3-hour commitment all the way up to 40 hours a week. So we have opportunities for basically anybody, students, retirees, full-time employees, whatever you're looking for to get back to the community. We have options. We have options in our programs, working directly with our members. We have opportunities in our office if you're looking for resume building around office skills.
Right.
And we even have fundraising events, so planning, behind the scenes, logistics, all those kinds of things. And really the commitment comes down to whatever that person's able to give. So we don't require you to sign a contract saying, I'm going to do 300 hours this year. And
That never really works well anyway.
no, it won't. And so it's a really flexible and dynamic opportunities. And we try and partner a lot with the university and colleges in the city to provide practicums and apprenticeships and those kinds of things so that we benefit from the hours, but they also are gaining a skill or a project coming out of it.
Right. Yeah, and it sounds like there's so much that can be done. It's like any other organization. There's a million jobs that need to get done,
Yeah.
and so they can take their skills and apply them and volunteer where they're needed.
Yeah, and all of our programs take place in leisure hours.
Right.
So if you're a full-time worker, that's fine. Our programs are in the evenings and weekends during the summers, July, August, the weekends for our vacation. So we really complement other people's schedules
Right.
quite well.
That's fascinating. Before we go on, I have to circle back to something I read about you, and you kind of, you said, even vacations, sometimes you'll help them plan vacations, right? And there was a comment I read that you can navigate Disneyland better than Calgary. You've got to explain that. Tell us about that. Does
Yeah.
that mean you just go there every month, or?
That would be the dream, but I do work for a charity, so no. So ever since I was a kid, so growing up in Ottawa, we were fairly close to Disney World. So I was very fortunate that my parents used to take my sister and I to Disney World quite a bit.
Right.
So when I moved to this side of the country, Disneyland is significantly smaller, so way easier to navigate. So my daughter, when she was born, I made a pact with her that her and I went to Disneyland every year, the two of us and Grandma. And we went on a little girls' trip, just the three of
Awesome.
us. And yeah, we would go for 5-6 days, and I love navigating, so it was just easy. And so yeah, now I know where all the special washrooms are and the water fountains are, and where all the good food is. But yeah, we've loved it going, the three of us.
You still
year.
go?
Not anymore. We've moved to cruising.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a whole new
So
adventure.
Disney cruising now?
No, that's
No, haven't done that yet?
No, we Royal Caribbean. We just came back 2 weeks ago from a
Okay.
cruise. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I just, like I said, I read it. I went, that's interesting, because
Yeah.
I've never been to Disneyland. I've been to Disney World a few
Yes.
times, and I mean, I turned into a big kid, right? So I just love Disney. It's a happy place, and you forget about all your stress. So I had to
Yeah.
ask about navigating. So anybody listening, if you need advice about Disneyland, you know who to get a hold of. But she might ask you to volunteer for a couple of
Yeah,
days as well. So.
the trade of services.
Absolutely.
I have planned many Disneyland trips for people.
That's fascinating. And I've got a friend who's done 1 million cruises. So if you need
There you
tips,
go.
I'll connect
Yeah.
you guys. Let's look at when you first started this journey. We talked about it. You weren't sort of going into this, to be the CEO. You sort of evolved into that role. And what do you wish somebody would have told you, so as you were moving into that leadership role? What would be helpful for our listeners? I wish I'd have known that, or I wish somebody would have told me that before I got there, right?
I would say, and I don't know how much your listeners do the fundraising side of things. I think we're a little bit unique in that sense, kind of being on the charity side.
Right.
But my biggest learning was I thought fundraising was very big and scary. How do you randomly ask someone to give you $5,000, $10,000, $100,000? To me, that
Yeah.
just didn't make sense. And what I wish someone would have explained to me is it has nothing to do with about asking for money. It has to do with relationship building, getting to know donors, whether it's even a donor or volunteer. What are their interests?
Right.
What do they want to give back to? And developing that friendship with them. And then naturally, things can happen from that.
Right.
And so for me, that was a big thing why I didn't originally want to become the CEO, is because I really didn't know how to do that side of this job. And now it's my favorite aspect, is getting to go out and have coffee with our supporters and cheering on our programs with, our reports talking about how successful things were because of donor dollars. Even with our staff and volunteers, I thought managing 85, 20 to 24-year-olds could be quite challenging.
Yeah.
But really, they're all here for the same cause. And so it's really just relationships, getting to know them, helping them. Our part-time staff are often wanting to become doctors and OT and speech language.
Right.
And so how can we actually help them to achieve their goals by supporting us?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because I know Christine McIver quite well, who founded Kids Cancer Care, and she's retired now.
Yep.
And, I remember we talked about fundraising a few years back now, and she always said fundraising is really the nonprofit's way of saying revenue on the business side, right?
Yeah.
Like, without revenue in business, you have no business, and without fundraising of some form, in the charity side, you don't have a business either, or an organization that can serve, basically. So I think anybody listening, I think it's applicable on either side, right? It's through relationships that we get there, it's through people. I've often joked in business we'd have no problems without the people, but we'd have no businesses or organizations. So
exactly, yeah.
So so really getting out there and being comfortable, interacting with other humans is a critical piece of being a senior leader.
Yeah, and just getting to know them on a very, basic level. What are they interested in? Like, I think it's sometimes we go in with very specific wants and needs from someone, but if you go in just trying to get to know them, it may take you a little bit longer to get to your end goal, but I find it's a lot more successful that way.
Now, you talked about assessments. There was a ton of assessments that you took prior to becoming the CEO. Mm-hmm. And, at Sonic Coaching, we use a lot of assessments. I often joke, when Tia, my business partner, has done an assessment on you, she knows more about you than your mother. And that's really scary because I get to be the guinea pig on all our assessments, right? So she knows me better than my mother, my father, my family, right? But and we use DISC here as well as many others. Like what assessments have you taken? What did you find was helpful? Because I know in organizations, sometimes they think about using assessments, but they don't use them. And I think they can be quite helpful.
Yeah, the one we found the most successful over time is personality dimensions.
Okay.
So it's basically a 4-colored scale. So green, gold, orange, and blue.
Yeah.
And why we tend to lean towards that one is it evolves with you throughout life. So you're not born a specific way and then you're stuck in that,
What? We don't change?
Yeah, right. And so we use it from a communications perspective. So especially working in a very small 13-person charity, we have people who have big feelings. We have people who are business number analytics. We have people who are fly by the seat of their pants. We are going to have fun no matter what.
Of course.
And
then you have those driven individuals who are let's just get to the end. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we really find that one to be the most useful to help us. Okay, so I'm a green gold, so I'm very much policy driven. I'm very much checklists and traditions and those kinds of things. So people know if they're going to come to me with a brand new idea, don't make it big, airy fairy. Like, I'm going to need some specifics on, have you done the risk assessment to this? Whereas, my fund development manager is very orange. She's very creative and competitive and, like I said, fly by the seat of your pants. And so, I have to make sure when I communicate with her that I'm using more her language.
Of course.
So we have found that one to be the most effective. We've done a whole bunch of other ones, but that's the one that has really
That's the one you've sort of grabbed onto.
Yeah. And then when I kind of made my big switch, we had done Strength Finder, which was also really cool.
Yep.
That one was a little bit scary because I did mine and my 5 strengths had nothing to do with the job I was doing. So I had a moment of like, am I going to get fired for this?
Well, you're still here, so no.
No, it opened a door. So it allowed me to start a conversation of, you know what, all of my strengths are operational. We don't have an operations department. I think I can help in this area. So it was a door opener. We just don't use it as often in our office.
Yeah, as you've sort of accelerated through your leadership, one of the things that came to mind for me, because every leader goes through it at some point and continues to every once in a while as we grow you talked about, we don't always, how we're born is not necessarily how we end up, and we can evolve and change our communication style, which I totally agree with. Tell me about imposter syndrome. It had to happen.
Every
And
day.
how did you get
right
every day?
now, right now, sitting here on a podcast right now, imposter syndrome.
Oh no,
Yes.
we're just talking. We're just sitting in our office having a great conversation.
Yeah.
But how do you get through it? Like, what do you do? What do you tell yourself? Because everybody listening here is going to go through this at some point.
So I laugh because my dad will always tell the story that at like 14 years old, I was at McDonald's, one of my favorite foods, and I needed sweet and sour sauce, and I would not ask for it because I was so shy.
Right.
And so he gave me an ultimatum: either you ask for it or we're leaving. And I picked up the tray, I garbaged my food and walked
Really?
out because I was that shy,
That shy.
timid.
Yeah.
So yes, I feel imposter syndrome every single day that I talk to strangers. And honestly, for me, it became a mindset shift. And I'm sure that that's easy for us to say.
Yeah.
But it really became into practice of, I just want to share between friends this message. This is no longer about me. This business in Calgary Leaders was probably the scariest thing I've ever done. I've never been in a magazine or a photo shoot.
Yeah.
And I really approached it from the perspective of, this is what Between Friends needs. We've been in existence for over 40 years. Nobody knows our name unless you're in our specific disability field.
Right.
And so this is one small piece that I can do to help our organization move forward in the big dreams that we have.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing I heard you say is, you just go out and do it, and you keep doing it, and you keep talking about it, and eventually it's less scary, right?
Yeah, it's that was probably the easiest, is the first one. I also think that I got a little bit different because starting right out of COVID, I had also never left my house in 2 years. And then all of a sudden I was standing on a stage trying to talk to a room full of people. But I also got thrown into it. I went to an event, thought I was there just as a supporter watcher. And then I got called up on stage to give a little bit of a speech about Between Friends. And so for me, that was probably the best thing that could have happened because I had no time to worry about it.
Those are the best ones.
Yeah.
Well, and it's kind of, we talked before we sort of, started recording, we talked about this. This is your first time doing it in person.
Yep.
You've done some on video.
Yep.
But in person's different, right? Yep. Like, we're sitting here face to face having a conversation.
Yep.
So
I don't have my warm slippers and my 3 puppies at my feet.
No puppies in the office.
Yeah.
Not that they're not welcome, but
Yeah.
you didn't bring them.
No.
So. No, and the other thing that we often get asked is, can we get the questions in advance? And we don't provide the questions in advance. We have a couple of signature questions, which we'll get to later. But, the reason we don't do that is because we want this to be natural. This is your organization. You've been there 20 years. You've forgotten more about Between Friends than most of our listeners know, right? And so it flows more naturally that way, right?
Yeah, I think otherwise you become formulated.
Right.
And it's like you're trying to remember specific stats or specific things that you want to share, and then sometimes you bypass the good pieces because you're very stuck on remembering this one thing.
Any stats you want to share? You
Not
brought it
right
up.
now.
No? Okay, good. Just checking.
Yeah.
Awesome. I got some stats, right?
Okay.
We know when you started.
Yeah.
You've been there 20 years, so we're good. We got lots of stats. So, one of the questions that we like to ask, when T and I are doing the interviews, or when I'm doing the interviews, is, we really look at personal development and professional development at Sonic Coaching as really one and the same, right? If you don't grow as a human, you really can't grow into your role for it. And also it's much more difficult to grow the organization. So what's been your favorite self-development book, tool? Like, what have you found kind of your favorite thing?
Wow.
Take your time on this one, because it's a big question.
I would say the first thing that comes to my head is I read a book, The First 90 Days.
Right. I'm quite familiar with it.
Yeah, I would imagine in this world you are.
It's a great book.
Yeah, I would say that one was probably my biggest because, and you touched on it before, running a charity is no different than running a business.
Right.
You just don't give your profit away, is really the end of it.
Right.
And I really wanted to approach my leadership style as if I was running a business. I find sometimes people in the world of nonprofits and charities sometimes lead a little bit too much with their heart and a little bit less with their head, and they run into some issues.
Yeah.
I have wonderful people that I surround myself with in my office who have the heart and do that for me. But I really wanted to approach it from, when you look at big businesses, how are they successful? What did they do to become so successful? And I wanted to make sure that we did that too. So I found that book to be by far the most helpful in my original journey into this.
Great book to actually, I don't know how you found it, but great book to read just as you were sort of starting in your leadership role as a CEO, because one of the stats that I've talked about in the past is on the Dow 500. Now we're talking some of the biggest companies, right? 2 out of 5 CEOs fail within the first 2 years, right? And it's a huge failure rate, right? And yet these are some of the most highly paid chief executive officers pretty much in the world, and yet they still fail. And when they sort of look back, they went, it all comes down to what decisions and what are you doing in the first 90 days to set yourself and the organization up for success. So for you to step into a role as a new CEO and read that book and go, okay, for my first 90 days, I've got to figure this out, right? I've got to I don't have to get it all done, but I actually have to sort of think about the strategy.
Well, in our first 90 days was COVID. We weren't operating.
So you had to pivot and adjust hourly sometimes.
Daily, right? Hourly, we were constantly making decisions. The government hadn't really been releasing plans for people with disabilities.
Right.
And so, when you were in a grocery store hearing, stay 2 meters apart. Well, if you're hard of hearing, that's not helping you.
No.
If you have signs on the floor that say 2 meters, that's not helping you if you're blind. And so we constantly were trying to work with the government to say, like, how do we open?
Right.
Like, what plans work for us? So that 90 days really helped me keep on track of, okay, my first 90 days, I think, started a couple times just because of the pivots, but it really helped me go back to the basics of, okay, what do we need to do right now? Okay, now what's next?
Right. Yeah. So it was like first 90 minutes?
Yeah.
Some days it probably felt that way, right? So, doing a lot of great work, and you're kind of a little bit of the best kept secret, as you sort of mentioned, right? So we're trying to change that for you. And so, we talked about people can volunteer in all areas of your business, but if they were, if they want to get involved, they're listening to this, they're saying, this sounds like a great organization. So, there's obviously the volunteering, but tell us how people can get involved. Like, what do you need? What are you looking for? I mean, you're a charity. I'm guessing money is always at the top of the list.
Yep. We're a little bit more unique than other organizations in the fact that we fundraise every dollar year over year.
Okay.
So we have no government contracts. We have no long-standing, long-term funding. So every year we raise almost $3 million, whether in program revenue or grants, foundations, individual donations, campaigns.
Right.
Every year.
So it's almost like starting at zero
every year. We start at zero. One of the big things when I came in was to start fundraising for the future.
Right.
So we've started working towards that. So yes, money always incredibly helpful. I truly answer this question with spread the word. I'm not going to ask you to volunteer. I'm not going to ask you to give your money. I'm just going to ask you to spread the word. Because when you talk about it, you might find someone who could use our services.
Right.
You might find someone who's waiting to give their next big endowment fund. You may know someone who's 16 and looking to volunteer. So I just ask that Between Friends name gets shared, that our goals, our dreams get shared so that the people who want to access our programs can, and that there are supporters to cheer us on as well.
Awesome. And as they're sharing that the word about your organization, I want to make sure they're also clear this isn't just for kids. And you're the one who changed that when you took over. So tell us about that, because it's important.
Yeah, so it actually wasn't, I won't take credit for that. But our organization started as just a children's charity.
Right.
While I worked at Between Friends, it was about 2007 that we opened because our teens became adults and they still needed programs. And so we were like, okay, let's open to 24-year-olds. Okay, so a few years later, the 24-year-olds became 25-year-olds.
Yeah.
And so by about 2009, 2010, we removed all age barriers. So we have children as young as 4 attending our programs, and we have adults in their 60s and 70s attending our programs. Wow. We're also the only organization in Alberta that doesn't require a diagnosis. So you can have a physical disability, you can have mental health issues, you can have cognitive delays, or you could just be looking for a safe place to be included.
Right.
We don't ask for any medical information. We don't ask for any of that kind of stuff. You're paired in a group with, in our evening programs, 8 people, in our camps, 20 kids, who all have different ability levels. And so that makes it very unique. It makes it difficult for our training. So we're training our staff to support 20 different types of individuals. But we really want to make sure that our participants are grouped in their chronological group.
Yes.
So if you're 19, we have a Bar Buddies program. Every Thursday night, you're going to go to the bar. You're going to try different beers if that's your choice. Maybe you're just there to have some appies.
Right.
But we do what would be age appropriate for those groups.
And keeping them safe at the same time.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Yeah. And what I really liked about what you just said is you don't ask for any medical proof. Somebody might just be feeling, I don't belong anywhere. I don't feel like I belong, right? And belonging, as you said, is one of your values, right? And so I don't belong, and I just need to go somewhere, and you're probably going to welcome them, right?
Yeah, we've seen a big switch actually. Also, we have a lot more younger members who are coming as part of the gender diverse groups.
Right.
So someone who might be in transition, or someone who has just come out to their family. Maybe they're very young, and so they'll come to our camps just for that safe, inclusive space while they go through their own things. And then they come out, and usually they become our staff members and get to give back to the programs that supported them.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, we're out of time. So, thank you so much for coming in and sharing a little bit about Between Friends, sharing a little bit about your journey. And I know there's been some great nuggets again that people were able to take away, whether it's read the first 90 days, whether it's how they can, be of help, right, by getting the word out there for your organization. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. You've been listening to the Business in Calgary podcast, powered by Sonic Coaching. I'm your host, Oliver Basner, and we just finished talking to Kim Presser, who's the CEO of Between Friends. So thank you, everyone.
Much.
Thanks for coming.